Hi, everybody.
Good
evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
flooding in the room.
Hi, Charlie.
Hey,
Hi.
How much I miss you. Who's else in the room?
They're still pouring in. Let's see if the guest of honor is here yet.
Yes, I saw him.
Oh, did you? Wonder what
He's
he did.
waving.
He's there.
Oh, there he is.
He's listed his iPad.
You're not in the Charlie Winters Center section of our TV show here.
I'm not like Paul Lind in Hollywood Squares.
Yeah, I'm dating myself badly with that reference. Thank you very much for joining us.
Oh yeah, no, I'm thrilled I could be with you guys tonight. This is great. I just got off a Joe Biden event with the Brady campaign.
Cool.
The vice president wasn't on, but I was on, and it was gun safety and anti-gun violence activists from around Virginia. That's where that was.
Perfect. I wonder who this Diane's iPhone is that's coming into the room now. And our good dear friend Gayleen Knoit is jumping in here. Let me get the old share screen going. Boy, my computer is slow. Senator, what are we going to do about this 5G thing into Norfolk? All right.
5G is one of the great things that we could do and get both Democratic and Republican support for it. And I think the living under coronavirus has definitely shown everybody, whether it's health visits, education, telecommuting, if you don't have good connectivity, either because you don't have the infrastructure for your house or you can't afford a device, you're left behind. So we ought to be able to figure out some way to make that a bipartisan priority.
Yeah. Of course, it could be my computer is old. 6 of one, half a dozen of the other.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see. I think most people are in, and I'll keep an eye on the room. So the first thing we want to do is welcome everybody to our July Norfolk Democratic City Committee meeting. We have our special guest, as we've been chit-chatting, and you all know. Oh, got to let my girl Betty in. So, giving it here, Susan. We're just about done. What is it? And hey, Tom, how you doing? All right. Housekeeping, as we all know, everybody, please try and keep yourself muted so we don't get feedback, and if you're having dinner on the call and all that kind of stuff. And we will go from there. Let me see. We need to see who our first order of business is to do our Pledge of Allegiance. So I will lead us all. And I want to point out it was Nancy Guy. I didn't know who else found it out. The last meeting, the flag I had flying only had 48 stars. So leave it to a delegate to tell me I was too short. But we're up to 50 now. So with that, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
And
one nation, under God,
under God,
liberty and justice for all.
justice for all.
Great words, great words. And as I said, we continually try to live up to them. All right, first thing, and Nick Kelly, let me get her in the room. Oh, the sheriff is in. So looking at our attendees, I want to first off see what special guests we have in here, even though we are all special. We have, of course, the senator. Going down through here, see who's made it in here. Michael Candewall from the Electoral Board, Phil Hernandez. Hey, Phil, our 100th House candidate last year, ran a great campaign. The greatest sheriff in the greatest city in America, Sheriff Joe Barron, is on the call. And we continue to look. Former Chair Linwood Fisher is on the call. Former Chair Betty Potts is on the call. Former Chair Diane Kaufman is on the call. Treasurer Dawn Hester is on the call. Hey, Dawn. And if I missed any of our elected officials, speak up now.
Is Gayleen here?
Is Gayleen in there? Well, I let her in. So, and Gayleen, the first vice chair of the Democratic Party of Virginia. But I didn't see her in my scroll.
I'm here.
Okay, hey,
I'm right
Gayleen.
above you.
Well, there you go. All right, so thanks all to our elected officials. We'd like to give a shout out to all of our first-time visitors. I think as I was going through and all the signups, we have a number of them. So I want to welcome you to the Norfolk City Democratic Committee business meeting. We're great people. You should join us because we have work to do to turn out big numbers in Norfolk to elect Biden, Warner, Loria, and Scott. So please consider giving us a join. So with that, we do want to introduce a guest speaker. I could go on a long biography, but I don't want to do that. The only thing I'm going to tell you about our guest speaker is this. I have firsthand knowledge he has exceptional taste in choosing his employees, and I'll leave it at that. So, the former mayor of Richmond has joined us. Tim Kaine, who happens to also be a former city councilman, lieutenant governor, and of course, our United States senator. But I couldn't help trying to have fun there. So with that, Senator, take it away.
Well, Charlie, thank you. And to everybody on the call, I've got a lot of really good friends here, and I know we're just going to have a good discussion. Let me do a couple of things. I want to just offer some personal words and then tell you a little bit about starting to get back out and travel around the state, and then say a word about the stakes in November. And then I'd love to open it up and just dialogue with you for a while. So first, just personal words. If you had told me in early March, beginning of March, that come even May, much less now, but come May, Ann and I would both have had coronavirus, and 2 of our 3 adult children would have been laid off their jobs because their jobs were closed because of the economic challenges that our country is facing, and that we would have known 4 people who had died of coronavirus, I would have said, you got to be kidding me. We have good jobs. We have good health insurance. We're fortunate people materially. We have a great safety net of friends and family. And yet all those things are true. I got coronavirus at the end of March in the Capitol while we were working to pass the CARES Act. I then came home and Ann and I were together quarantining here for 38 days in a row. And I gave coronavirus to my wife. Just one more thing for a husband to feel guilty about. Thank goodness both of our cases were mild, and by mid-April we were recovered, but 2 of our 3 adult children, one in Minneapolis and one in New York, lost work for many months. The New Yorker just went back. The Minneapolis son not yet back to work. And then we know 2 Richmonders and 1 Fairfax senior citizen, and then a distant relative in Louisiana who all passed in the last couple of months. And so what that teaches me is a couple of things. First, that this touches everybody. It doesn't touch everybody equally. Those dying of coronavirus are disproportionately African American. Those getting it are disproportionately African American or Latino. Those losing their jobs are disproportionately African American, Latino, women, young people, people at the low end of the income ladder. And then you add to it the just shocking death of, just the shocking death of George Floyd, played on our TV screens over and over again, and so many other cases. We realize that while we're living in a most challenging time and everybody is affected in one way or the other, these effects do not fall equally on everybody's shoulders. And so I wanted to just start off that personally, because while not knowing your situations on the call, I know this about you. All of you have your own anxieties about your own health or the health of people you love. You may know somebody who has been sick or who has died. You may have a parent or grandparent in a nursing home you haven't been able to visit. You may have a grandchild that you haven't been able to hold, or a child that you haven't been able to spend time with. You may know somebody who's lost a job, or you may yourself have lost a job or had your hours cut back. In Hampton Roads, you're certainly seeing significant economic effects in an economy that is driven pretty significantly by tourism, with tourism down. So, and on the racial justice issues, the scar tissue is so fresh that every new example of somebody putting up a videotape of, law enforcement or others treating people badly just because of the color of their skin, because they're African American or dark skinned, has just got to be like, it's horrible. So I wanted to just start and express sort of sympathy, solidarity, unable to be verbalized emotions of connection with all of you in the challenging times that we're living with, because Ann and I now have been close enough to it to see how truly challenging this is. Second, with respect to the work, I pretty much stopped traveling around the state or anywhere after the first or second weekend in March. And other than being in my Senate office, working on the CARES Act and then working on subsequent bills, or being here in Richmond working via Zoom, between basically May 26th and just last week, I've done all my work either from the DC office or from my home in Richmond. I've done a few things in Richmond because the protests and street activism in Richmond has been so significant that just as a Richmond citizen, I've been out and involved in some of these things. But other than that, I'd stayed pretty close to home until last week. I felt like the situation, we're in a 2-week recess last week, and this week I've been doing a little bit of traveling, and I did my first day back in the Norfolk area last Tuesday to go and spend time with people, especially around healthcare issues at Centera and others. I spent a day in Norfolk and Newport News, spent a day in Danville, spent a day in Fredericksburg, spent a day in Loudoun. Tomorrow and the next day I'm going to go out to Southwest Virginia, Blacksburg, and further southwest. And just to talk to people about what they're experiencing, but also when we go back to Washington on Monday, we've got 3 weeks to come up with the next big package of coronavirus relief for the American public. And I'll tell you what I'm hearing from people is that the heart of this next relief package needs to be hardship assistance for families and individuals. We've done, sort of 5 pillars: aid to individuals and families, aid to small businesses, aid to large businesses, aid to state and local governments, aid to hospitals and the healthcare system. And those are all critically important, but we're living in a hardship. And the core of this next bill, in my view, while the Republicans are talking about liability protection for businesses and things like that, my priority is hardship assistance. And that means for the unemployed, for people who are facing eviction or foreclosure, or who are hungry, or who can't find the childcare they need so that they can go back and work as a nurse or a first responder at a hospital. Healthcare, people laid off who've lost healthcare benefits and can't afford a COBRA premium, or can't afford to buy an Obamacare policy on the market because they don't have income. We need to be there for them. So I'm going back with hardship assistance, just like emblazoned on my forehead as the key thing that we need to be about in Congress as we work on the next package. So that's point 2. Point 3, November. Mark Warner famously says, we always say this election is the most important in our life, and this year we're not lying. I'm going to be starker than that. I will never cast in my entire life a vote that will be as important as the one that I'll pass this November. And I plan on living for a very long time. And so who knows what future years will have to challenge us with. But President Donald Trump has ushered in death at an unnecessary scale, economic depression at a devastating scale, and social division at an outrageous scale. And, I feel a sense of personal, deep regret about that, because I spent 105 days as part of a ticket in 2016 telling Americans exactly what a Donald Trump presidency would mean, what it would mean to a country to have an anti-science, narcissistic, bigoted bully leading this country. And 63 million people said, well, that's just fine. We want that guy. And tens of millions of others said, it doesn't matter enough to us to even get out and participate. And so what we have seen is exactly what I thought would happen. I didn't know there would be a pandemic, but I knew in the life of any presidential 4-year term, there will be big challenges. I knew how poorly suited this guy was to lead a nation that I love so deeply. And looking at 130,000 deaths and climbing, and an unemployment rate that's quadrupled in the last few months, and social division that's so stark, and a president who really doesn't care about all that, who thinks he can use that to his advantage in some ways, it's very, very tough. So what I've been doing, and I know you have too, is focusing very heavily on the presidential race and making sure that we will win Virginia. And I feel good about winning Virginia, but I certainly take nothing for granted. I want to make sure that we keep our Virginia congressional delegation strongly Democratic, having gone from a Republican delegation to now 2 U.S. senators and a 7-4 edge in the congressional delegation. I want to keep it and get better. So I want to get Mark elected. I want to make sure we're there for Elaine and Abigail and Jennifer. Those were the 3 seats we flipped last time. I think Jennifer's district is so positively blue that I'm not particularly worried about her, but I'll say Elaine and Abigail's races, we could lose those races if we don't pour everything into them. And then the good news is we also have 2 other House races where we've got a chance in the 1st and the 5th. The 1st comes down near to the Hampton Roads area, and the 5th is, sort of the US 29 district from Danville up to Loudoun through Charlottesville, Lynchburg, other communities. But I don't want to stand still. We can add to our congressional delegation this year. And then the 3rd thing, winning for Biden, doing well with our Virginia delegation. But the 3rd thing I'm really focused on, and I'll say a word about that and continue, is I'm just doing as much work as I can to flip the Senate blue. Now, I feel good about keeping the House blue and even going further. I think we will. The Senate, we're down. We have to win 4 net seats. I don't like counting on a vice presidential tiebreaker. We got to win 4 net seats. And a year ago, we didn't have many pieces on the chessboard. So we're trying to win 4 net seats with a couple of seats like Alabama and potentially Michigan being challenging to defend. And then we didn't have that many seats where we really saw the path to victory. Yeah, we had Arizona. Yeah, we had Colorado. Yeah, we had Maine. But beyond that, a year ago, it was tough. But now let's add to that. We got North Carolina. We got the 2nd seat in Georgia. We got Iowa. We got Kansas. We got Montana. We got Alaska. We got a great candidate in South Carolina who's giving Lindsey Graham a run for his money. We got a great candidate in Kentucky who's going to give Mitch McConnell a run for his money. So suddenly trying to pick up those 4 net seats is not a matter of how can we pick up 4 seats if we only got 3 pieces on the chessboard. I mean, we got a lot of pieces on the chessboard. Why does this matter so much, the Senate? I probably don't have to say it, but I will say it. If President Trump has a 2nd term, I probably don't have to say why a Democratic Senate is so important. The Supreme Court, all the efforts that Trump will take to dismantle the values and institutions that we think of as quintessentially American. We got to have some guardrails. Even with the Democratic Senate, we would not be able to stop all the damage that Trump would do in a second term, but we would be able to curb it in. But you know what? I'm an optimist. I think we're going to have a President Biden. And I'll tell you, in an odd way, it's the prospect of a President Biden that makes me even more worried about the Senate, because if we have a President Biden, there will be enormous pent-up demand for progress, to reduce gun violence, to raise the minimum wage, to do immigration reform, to fight climate change. There will be enormous happiness about a Biden presidency and an enormous desire to make forward motion. I will tell you this, I've gotten to know Mitch McConnell very, very well. The one thing he excels at more than anything else is blocking progress. He loves to block progress, first, because he's not a progressive, and second, because he knows if there's high hopes and he can dash them, he can demoralize people and make them decide that their engagement didn't mean anything, and likely in 2 years and 4 years and 6 years and 8 years lead to a situation where people do not participate. And if that's the case, then the bad guys win and the good guys lose. And so a McConnell as majority leader under a Biden president will be extremely grim, where the pent-up desires and hopes and excitement and optimism to make meaningful changes of the kind we were able to make in Virginia after we flipped both houses last year, that will all be dashed. And high hopes can turn into bitter disappointment pretty quickly. So I am really riveted upon this work. You guys in Norfolk have been, I always say that all Virginia Democrats have been part of the best political turnaround in the United States, if you just look at it as a statewide level in the last 25 years. But I will say that the broader Hampton Roads Democratic performance, led by stalwarts, Norfolk and Portsmouth have always been stalwarts. You guys have always been stalwarts, but now it's broadening out into Virginia Beach, often, not always. Chesapeake, more often than not. Suffolk, often, not always. Newport News and Hampton, more often than not. You guys have been the leaders of it, and now you're seeing that Hampton Roads turnout and margin for Dems has just been absolutely rock solid critical. And it will be for the presidential, for the Senate. It will be for Elaine. It will be for Bobby. Your media market includes the first where we have a chance this year to knock Rob Whitman off. So anyway, I'm psyched to be on this call with you tonight. And Charlie, thank you for asking and for doing the good work as committee chair, and for all of you who are on this, Gayleen, and others who are active in local politics, but also in the state party and also in the national party. I thank you for your work. It's never been more important, and I don't think it will ever be more important than it is between now and November 3rd. So glad to be with you tonight.
All right, we're going to open this up for questions. You can certainly type your questions in the chat box, and we'll read it to you, or you can go down to the participants and raise your little blue hand, and we can unmute you. But the first question, my privilege. I'm going to be an optimist. Joe Biden's going to win a resounding victory. We're going to have 52, 53 Democratic senators and a House. My question is, how much appetite might there be to reduce, eliminate the filibuster that will basically shut down all the initiatives that are out there, with that 60 vote margin?
Charlie, I'll tell you my feeling about this, and that is not necessarily the feeling of every Democrat, every member of the Democratic caucus. But I've been making this case with my colleagues, and we got to focus on November 1st, but I'll continue to make this case. So, two things. Number one, the American public, they care about results. They don't care about internal Senate rules. Mm-hmm. So I do have some colleagues who are very focused on, we need to change the Senate rules. And I always say to them, the American public doesn't They don't care about the rules. What they care about is results.
Right.
Now, the American public does understand majority rule. And every state legislature in this country operates on majority rule. And virtually every election, with the exception of a presidential election, is run by majority rule. People get that. But I would like to make it about the issues rather than about the Senate rule. So here's what I think we ought to do. I think if we get a Democratic majority, we ought to put one bill after the next on the floor, start in January, raise the minimum wage. Let's do immigration reform. Let's do background record check. Let's do the Equality Act so that folks who are LGBT do not have to worry about being discriminated against. Let's do positive investments in education to reverse the DeVos defunding of education. And I think instead of doing what the Senate often does, which is lump a lot of bills together, I think we ought to just put one thing on the floor after the next. Send things through committee that we know the American public wants us to do. Get secret money out of politics. And the first time that we can't get the votes to do it because the Republicans invoke a 60-vote threshold to try to stop us, we say, we got elected for a reason. We told the American public we were going to do something. And you're not going to use some artificial Senate rule that was never intended to be invoked on everything in the way they're going to do it. You're not going to do that to get in the way of the mandate that the American public just gave Joe Biden and a Democratic majority. So I don't know that we're going to have that majority, but I'll tell you this, if we do, I'm going to be making the case to my colleagues, don't elevate form over substance here. The American public, they don't know what's in the Senate rules, and they know that the Senate can change the rules. They don't really care about the rules. What they care about is results. We owe them results. That's what we'll owe them. And I'm not going to let some artificial rule get in the way of delivering them results. I don't want to change the rule to change the rule. I want to get results for people. And if people use bad rules to block results, then we can, should, and have the power to change the rules to get the results that people want.
Okay, wonderful. I'm going to unmute the Vice Chair of the Democratic Party of Virginia, the fabulous, wonderful Galen Kaine.
Hey, Galen.
Thank you so much, Charlie. Thank you. And thank you for having this meeting. This is a great meeting. And Senator Kaine, good to see you. I have two quick questions, which only require short answers.
Yep.
We have two pandemics going on. So my first question is on the COVID. Clearly, there's not enough tests that are being done, or they don't have enough supplies for tests to be done in Virginia. What we're seeing, and across the country too, and what we're seeing now is that you have laboratories that's starting to pop up. One is in Virginia Beach that can turn around results within 2 to 3 hours. They're charging $225, and they're not taking any insurance. They're not with any insurance or any Medicaid whatsoever. It's almost like the same, they're taking advantage of the vulnerable because people need to have these results to get back to work. And the other facilities the other facilities that are doing the tests are taking 5 to 7 days for it. So that's a trend that you're getting ready to see. That's my first one. Will we get more tests? Have anyone start looking at this trend that's getting ready to happen? My second one is there's a group of prosecutors in Virginia that's going to put together some legislation, hopefully in a special session, be presented in a special session, where if officers witness other officers doing the same thing what happened with George Floyd, that they will be charged as well, and it'll be a felony charge in the whole 9 yards.
Mm-hmm.
Will you think that will happen nationally?
Galen, I'll take him in reverse. I think that there does need to be, in a national police reform bill, obligations put on the shoulders of officers not to cover up bad behavior, but to report it. And there needs to be a lot more than that. We got to ban chokeholds. We got to ban no-knock warrants. We got to ban profiling. We have to make adjustments to the qualified immunity doctrine. We have to stop shielding people who have multiple complaints against them for improper use of force. We can't let people leave the force as they're about to get disciplined and just join another police office. It's like the priest abuse scandal. We can't move people around and let them perpetrate new outrages on new people. So I think that should be a part of a national bill. And let's see, the first half again was, oh,
About the
testing.
COVID testing, more testing, and about these laboratories that started to take advantage of people.
I'll be real blunt. Here's the problem on testing right now. The nation is not doing adequate testing because the president doesn't want us to. Other nations embraced a very aggressive testing and social contact tracing strategy right out of the gate. And that meant that not only have they held down hospitalizations and deaths, but by doing that, they didn't have to have their economy get so hammered as ours did. This president, by first downplaying the reality of the virus, but then also basically not putting the productive capacity of the nation behind tests, has really hobbled us. Give you an example. The president declared a national emergency on the southern border, southwestern border, and then pulled money out of the Pentagon to build a wall. He hasn't done that about coronavirus or testing. The president has utilized something called the Defense Production Act to order industries into action, but the industries he's ordered are like meatpacking plants. He hasn't ordered industries into action to produce sufficient testing. I believe that we're doing about a third the testing every day that the nation needs. And that's in the 6th month of this pandemic. We're only up to a third of what we need to be. Our VA hospitals don't have enough tests. I was at the McGuire VA in Richmond last Friday, and get this, I asked the leadership of the hospital, give yourself a grade about the testing that you're doing. And they said D or C minus. I said, well, what do you mean by that? And they said, look, we need to do 3 times the testing we're doing, but we don't have the tests, we don't have the swabs, we don't have the chemical reagents, and we can't get test results back fast enough to be meaningful. If in a hospital setting that is supposed to be about helping our veterans, we're at a third of where we ought to be, well, in the rest of society, we're probably at even less than that. And that's an intentional problem that the administration is doing. So I don't believe we're going to have the testing we need to have until there's a Biden presidency.
Thank you.
Before I go to the next question, going back to that great personnel decision, your state director jumped on the call a minute ago, Corinne Dongo.
Hey, Corinne.
Carrie Buchanan. Let me unmute you there.
Charlie, I'm glad you're working the technology on this.
I tell you what, about the time this pandemic ends, I'll have this Zoom thing down. Are you on there, Carrie?
Yes, I am.
Good.
Hey,
So my question is forward thinking, assuming that we have Senate, House, President, control, etc.
Yeah.
What are we going to be doing about those companies, the really large companies that still don't pay workers anywhere near enough, and we're paying them through Medicaid and welfare, everything else we're paying all of their employees because they don't, but these companies are getting a massive free ride, and I think it's more than just getting them to pay people more in money. I think they owe us a lot more than that.
Well, I think, is it Carrie or Karen?
Carrie.
Carrie. So, look, I think that, this administration will probably go out after 4 years, and the only meaningful policy change that they will have made that Trump will be proud of is that he gave himself and his friends a massive tax cut. I mean, Trump will probably be a one-term president who will brag about that it was the best 4 years of his life in terms of increasing his own finances and the finances of his family. So the tax cut for corporations, they weren't even asking for a tax cut of the size that they got, was just outrageous. And I know that Vice President Biden is talking about reversing much of that. The fact that it went so much to people at the top end, especially to corporations, makes no sense. So that's number one. We got to have a tax code that's fairer, and that's not just corporate tax code. The individual tax code now basically advantages those who make their money off dividends, interest, carried interest, capital gains, off basically earnings, and it disadvantages those who make wages and salaries. So we need a tax code that more fairly treats people who are wage and salary people and doesn't just give the advantage to those who are earnings people. And I believe that Joe understands that too. I think that there are other things that we need to do, to advantage people over the least of these over the most of these. And so that's why we need to focus on things like, dramatically expanding affordable health care for people. And much of that may be not through employers. I think the way the United States structures healthcare through employers is very out of whack with the way the world does it. And it leaves people vulnerable as they're moving from job to job or place to place. And so employers ought to have a financial burden to chip into healthcare. But I don't know that we should be tying people's healthcare to their jobs the way that we almost uniquely do in the country right now. So I think there's a lot that needs to be done. One of the ways we can accomplish all of these things is by being serious about campaign finance reform and making sure that our politics isn't driven primarily by secret money. The Citizens United and other decisions that have allowed so much of our political spending to be done by corporations or others who don't even have to disclose their identity. We got to change that. We ought to have a rule that there's no secret money in our political system, and anybody who's contributing to a candidate, a party, a PAC that's running an ad, that it all needs to be public. If we just had complete disclosure, you would see the amount of corporate money and other money from fat cats dramatically drop. They only give because they feel like they can be protected with anonymity. And if we take that away, which would be good for everybody, they'll have much less power in our politics.
Thank you.
You bet.
All right. I know we're running out of time and we got a bazillion people with their hands up. Phil Hernandez, if we can figure out a way to squeeze a few more votes out of Accomack, Northampton, and Norfolk, we'll get a new delegate.
We'll see. Thank you, Charlie, and Senator, good to see you.
Good to see you again.
My question was about the conversations around the next package of relief that you sort of alluded to at the beginning. And I'm particularly interested in the unemployment insurance component of that. As you know, I'm sure the additional $600 supplement is ending at the end of this month, actually sooner, on the weekend, on the 25th. And I hear a lot of people raising concerns about that, not only because Virginia's maximum benefit is much lower than many other states. Max is around $378. We also are seeing real racial disparities pop in the data. The last couple of weeks in particular, half of all UI applicants have been African-American. And then just the timing with the evictions starting again, it feels like a little bit like a perfect storm in Virginia. And so I'm just curious what you think it might look like, what the contours of that reform might be.
Yeah, Phil, this is probably going to be the most debated issue when we go back. And I'll tell you, let me focus on UI, but then broaden the lens a little bit. So we did 3 things on UI in the CARES Act and in the other legislation we passed in March that were really important. First, we extended the number of weeks that you could get unemployment from the norm because of the depth of this crisis. Second, we expanded the universe of people who could apply to pick up, self-employed, independent contractor, multiple part-timers, gig workers. Both of those, I think we will definitely continue. The third thing we did is we added the $600 a week on top of whatever you would get through your state UI program. You would get that additional. I am fighting very hard, and I know Democrats are too, to maintain that $600 a week, either in UI or in what I would call the functional equivalent of it. I'm not sure I want to limit that just to those who are unemployed, because there's an awful lot of people who are back to work, but they're not yet making everything they wanted, or they've had unusual health care or other expenses. So I look at this as we've got to provide American families and individuals with hardship funding. And that hardship funding needs to cover eviction and foreclosure, and it needs to cover childcare expenses. You're trying to go back to work as a nurse or a frontline first responder, and you're not sure whether the schools are going to be open, you need to find childcare assistance. If you lost a job, you can't afford the COBRA payment to continue if you had a health policy before. So I sort of want to broaden it from just $600 a week for UI to a larger hardship fund that would be a weekly payment, that would be for unemployed people or people who are facing eviction challenges or educational expenses or childcare expenses. So I think the issue is whether or not we end up with the $600 extra for unemployed a week, or whether we end up with a broader set of weekly payments to people who are suffering, even if they might be employed. I want to take that chunk of money, and I'd like to take that chunk of money and build it out through year end. I don't think we could say, oh, this hardship's going to be over in 2 months, so let's just do something in the last 60 days. I think this hardship is going to go through year end, and I would like to provide ample funding for people to get through the hardship. The other thing is, I hear Republicans talking about stimulus or whatever. They're using a euphemism because we're living in a hardship. We're living in a hardship because of this global pandemic, and we're living in a hardship because of an administration that's mishandled it. We're not stimulating anything right now. We're trying to save people's lives. And I think we ought to be honest about what this is. This is hardship assistance money. And every time Democrats talk about it, we ought to be talking about it as hardship assistance, because that's the reality that we're living in because of who is in the White House right now.
All right. If you still got a few more minutes, Senator, we still got a few more questions. Tim Rothgeb. Can you unmute yourself and ask your question?
I have.
Hey,
No.
Tim. Tim, nice to man.
Nice to see you again, Tim. I believe we're at a unique inflection point right now. We have tens of millions of people unemployed, and we have an infrastructure that is beyond its useful life. I think we should put the two things together, and as a stimulus or whatever type of package you want to say, we can offer good paying jobs to anyone who wants them, replacing our infrastructure. We could create bubble communities so that we're not creating a big, massive infrastructure to spread COVID. Comments. I mean, I'd love to see something like that occur.
Yeah. Oh, Tim, I think I think we have to do that. I will give you a practical politics concern about how and when, but not about whether. I think we have to, and we have to define infrastructure in a broad way to include the new reality that if you don't have good broadband or one of these at an affordable rate, you're cut out of a lot of economic life. You're cut out of telehealth, you're cut out of education, you're cut out of teleworking. So that needs to be part of our definition of infrastructure. So I'm completely with you. And Biden gets this and would be the perfect person to do a massive infrastructure bill. Here's a worry I have right now. As many of you know, Trump has often declared it to be infrastructure week during his presidency. And, after the declaration, he does nothing. And I know the reason. He has done nothing because he has been unwilling to pay for it. He's been unwilling to announce the pay for that will enable us to make these investments that we could employ people on in the short term and then raise our economic platform in the long term. Because he's chicken, because he doesn't want to alienate Grover Norquist, because, he doesn't want to, he's scared that Republicans don't want to vote for fee or tax increases. So he's never been willing to do what a Donald Trump builder should do, which is an infrastructure bill. Trump and the White House team are a little bit interested now. Hey, wait, maybe now that we're doing it all off borrowed money, we can push some super sugar high infrastructure bill over the next couple months And when we haven't been willing to do it forever, we can do it right now as a way of, suggesting that we care. I don't think we should give President Trump a freebie on this one. I think if there's a pay for infrastructure, yeah, we can do it. But I don't think we should give Trump a borrowed money, sugar high freebie infrastructure bill that will just jazz his prospects for November when he has been unwilling to seriously engage on this topic for 3.5 years. So if there's going to be a pay for and a revenue stream to do it and do it right, I'll do it. But I am worried about a Trump wanting to just try to swoop in and do some debt finance package with no meaningful pay for as a way to save his own skin in the last months before an election. But I do agree with you. I think this is setting up very, very well for nearly the perfect conditions: low interest rates, a need to rebuild infrastructure, an increasing awareness of things like a digital divide that hamper both, urban folks who can't afford devices and rural folks who don't have connectivity. I think there's some synergies there, and I think it would be an early potential success for a Biden administration.
Well, the one comment that I'll make, please don't do what was done with the tunnel to Portsmouth and sell the infrastructure off to private companies.
Yeah.
It should be public infrastructure, and no tolls, the whole 9 yards. You understand where I'm coming from on there, but I do get and understand your point about maybe we shouldn't do this until after the election. Thank you, Tim.
You bet, absolutely. And hey, Charlie, the person who is front and center on my screen, I don't know if it's on everybody's screen, is Mary Ann White, and she's had her hand up from the very beginning. So I'm not going to leave until I take her question.
All right, Mariana, I am so sorry because you are not on my little raised blue hand over here.
Oh yeah, I couldn't find it. Thank you, Senator Kaine.
All right, who's that going to fall on, you or me?
I'll take it.
Okay.
Senator Kaine, first I wanted to thank you for agreeing to the clause that makes the funds to Israel contingent on them not annexing the West Bank. I think just as we're aware in our country that we have not done enough to make things fair for people of color. In Israel, they have not done enough under the Netanyahu leadership. He has really behaved horribly to people. But also, I guess the other thing I think you're answering, I'm just really concerned about the extension of unemployment benefits. Even though I haven't talked to a lot of people who are telling me this, I know they're all around us.
Yeah.
And I'm really concerned about that. So made me a little nervous when you said you wouldn't work on an infrastructure bill just to make Trump happy. So I don't know how I feel about that because people really need jobs right now. So even if it looks good for him, if it's good for the country, we need to do it. So that's just a little piece of advice I would give.
Yeah, let me talk to Mariana. I agree with you, and this has been my philosophy all along, and I've worked with Trump on some things. If it's good for the country, I'm going to do it. I believe an infrastructure bill that was not funded would not be good for the country. I think infrastructure is an investment that should pay for itself, and that doesn't mean you can't borrow some. Interest rates are great, but I don't think, there are users using infrastructure who could be paying some portion of it. I don't think we should just apply, more debt to it. And I just don't think that's we didn't do that at the state level. We traditionally don't do that at the federal level. So I will want to see some pay for on that. Let me say on the UI, we've got to do something to help people get over this hardship. And again, whether it's the $600 a week to the unemployed, I'm also thinking about the underemployed. I'm thinking about people who may not have lost their job. Maybe their income is the same, but suddenly they have a childcare expense that they didn't have, or a healthcare expense that they didn't have, or or those expenses put them in danger of foreclosure. 1/3 of people in this country who have house notes did not make their house payment on July 1st because other things out there are getting in their way. And the last thing I want to say is on Israel-Palestine, because a number of folks have been asking about this. I am a strong supporter of Israel, but I am deeply, deeply, deeply worried about an Israeli annexation of the West Bank, because that a unilateral annexation would undercut what has been U.S. policy since 1947. And so I'm on the Armed Services Committee. In the Armed Services Committee, I was part of the effort that got in the Armed Services Bill security assistance for Israel. And I did that because I think they need it against threats like Iran and others. But I don't want US dollars to be used to undercut US policy. So we have a proposed amendment that doesn't cut off the funding, but it says none of the security funding could be used in annexed territories or to support annexation whatsoever, to make absolutely plain that we deeply oppose that. I helped lead a letter that ultimately had about 27 or 28 Democrats on it. I've had some people who are also pro-Israel say, why are you doing this publicly? Why are you writing this public letter to Netanyahu? Why are you proposing this public amendment on this topic? Why don't you call them up and say it privately? And I say, I'll tell you why. The governing agreement between Netanyahu and Gantz publicly said that they would move forward with the annexation no earlier than July 1st with the support of the United States. They made it public that they would move forward with the support of the United States. And if they're going to take it public that that's what they believe, then I'm going to be as public as I can as a member of the Foreign Relations Committee and the Armed Services Committee, and somebody who's visited Israel more times than I visited Ireland, where my family is from. I'm not hostile to the U.S.-Israel relationship, but if you're saying you're doing something with our support that we bitterly oppose, that's been against 70 plus years of American policy, then I'm going to be equally public and say we don't support it. And you can't use our funds to undercut U.S. policy. So that's why I am promoting this amendment.
Well, thank you so much for that. And I'm very pro-Israel too, but I'm also pro-Palestinian. They're all valuable human beings.
Absolutely.
But I do also want to say to you, I know we always worry about a balanced budget on a state level, but on the federal level, we can make the money for the priorities that we have. And I don't think anybody would be fooled by Trump all of a sudden appearing kind. So I think if he's open to and doing some infrastructure, and it's going to help the country. I know you're a lot wiser than I am, but that's still, I say take it.
I hear you.
I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you literally, and I mean literally, 2 cents worth of advice. You want to pay for infrastructure, put a 2-cent transaction tax on every stock transaction on Wall Street. It's insignificant. 2 cents a share.
Yeah.
Now, some tells me that's a lot of money, but that's. We are, Senator. I got people. We're 10 minutes over. I got people still wanting to ask you questions. Can you go say till 8 o'clock? 5 more minutes.
Well, let me propose an alternative too. So.
Sure.
I said I'd stay until 8. It's 7:55, and I would like to get off in time just because I've had a long day.
Yeah.
But any unanswered question, if you will give those questions to Diane and Corinne, we will get answers to any of the questions posed that were unanswered.
All right, Ruth, Alfreda, Michael.
The question in the chat chat side, and we'll make sure you get an answer.
Okay, that's a deal. That's a deal. Can't thank you enough for spending this time with us. You're a great senator, and we're proud to have you. And thank you very much. And can't wait to get you down in person back in the 757 sometime soon.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it too. It's been very fun to go back out on the road after a number of months of not doing it.
Yeah.
So to go back out on the road, but I'm doing, events with 6 or 7 people, either in big conference rooms or outdoors. Boy, I tell you, I mean, I feel for anybody who's a candidate this year, because I feel like everything that I'm good at in campaigning is the thing that I couldn't do this year. I like parades. I like rallies. I like shaking people's hands. I like face-to-face conversations. All the things that I'm good at, you can't do. So I have real feeling for those who are, Elaine Lurie and Mark and Bobby and others who are out there on the ballot. It's a challenging time. But the good news is you guys have their back, and they know what you can do when you're doing your best work, because they've seen it. They've seen you turn Virginia from the best turnaround in the United States among states in the last 20 years. And I got a good feeling about we're going to do it again this November.
Yeah. Well, God bless you. Say hello to your lovely bride for the Norfolk City Democratic Committee. And again, thank you very, very much.
All right, Charlie, you're the best, man. Thank you.
Okay, be good.
Yeah.
All right. Again, Ruth, Alfreda, all the people who had their hand raised, I'm sorry. We just, and there's probably some in the chat room. Just throw it in the chat room. We will shoot it up and get some answers. So that was fantastic, in my humble opinion.
Yes.
All right, moving on. Gosh, what's next? I forget. I got to get the, come on, move for, oh man, see what I said earlier here, my computer's running slow. I get the little, there we go. All right, we go into our reports real quick. First thing, the minutes were sent out. I probably have a comment about that. Was everybody able to access that Google Drive to get the minutes from last month? Because I didn't know if that became problematic for some. But hopefully everybody did get the minutes. And if there are no challenges or exceptions to the minute, so we will go ahead and accept them unless there is a vote no. So anybody opposed to accepting the minutes that was distributed? 3, 2, 1. Thank you. They are accepted. Treasurer's report.
All right.
Cash register is open.
Yes. So we actually had a relatively busy month this month compared to the last couple. I think that's in large part due to some new members coming on to the group, and then also people purchasing the Norfolk Democrats masks from our website, which is a reminder, norfolkdems.org. You can go out and get yourself a Norfolk Democrats mask. The beginning balance at the beginning of the month was $9,739.20. We had $262.02 of deposits. We had withdrawals of $1,265.08, and that math works out to an ending balance on June 30 of $8,736.23. And then on the right, you can see everything that is reported to the State Board of Elections, and we reported our second quarter filing for April, May, and June just yesterday. So we were ahead of the deadline and good to go there. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
Very good. Thank you very much. 2 things on the treasurer's report. 1, I have some elected officials who are going to be contributing towards that face mask purchase. They haven't sent in the check, so we will have some receipts shortly on that. And 2, if anybody ever wants to see the actual financial reports, it's up and open. Just go to the State Board of Elections, go to the campaign finance reports, and you can take a look at everything that we do as a committee and keeping us. Yep.
And a note on that as well, if you do go to those reports, you're not going to be able to see every itemized dollar just because most people aren't spending or aren't donating to the group in large sums. So you may not see your name on there or somebody else's, but there are quite a few members that do spend over that $100 mark within a year. So, so that's just something to be aware of if you're going to go take a look at that.
All right, very good. Toy, did you have anything?
No, not, well, can you
Yeah,
hear
you're
me?
on. Yep.
Well, right now, I'm going to say that we are exploring different opportunities in which to reach out to other organizations, possibly radio stations, talk radio stations that might be willing to allow us to talk about getting out the vote. That is still to be determined. So stay tuned. That's all I can say.
All right, Randy, are you ready? We have some new members. They came flooding in for that Norfolk Dems face mask.
Yep.
Ba-doom! And we have a drum roll, please. We did have 4 new members who we have approved as an executive committee. Susan Broadus, Howard Nichols, Scott Wyatt, and Helen Pryor, whoever she is. Helen is. But I do need a motion to accept these 2 at-large members. For those who are new, at-large members are committed to being active in the committee and volunteering precincts and other organizations.
I make a motion to accept them.
I second the motion.
All right.
Wait a second.
No. We don't vote on them.
Yeah, large members. Yes, we do.
Oh,
Yeah.
For the associates.
So, yeah, that's what I said. Carolyn and Desi are the at-large members.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I was writing too much.
Okay. So Sheriff Joe Barron made the motion. Mike Candlewall seconded it. And again, because we're in this, I'm just going to go the negative. If anybody is opposed, please speak up. Unanimously approved. Thank you very much. Now, by the way, let's grow our committee. Talk to a friend or a neighbor. Everybody bring me a new member next month. See what you can do. Let's grow ourselves if we can. Megan, outreach.
Yes, as things keep going, some events are being canceled, but some are still going on. I discussed with the coordinator of event on Church Street on July 25th on Saturday, called the What Now event. It's a community event on whether or not we could have a table there. Unfortunately, because it's sponsored by a church, they can't have a political party specifically there, but they do need volunteers. And I had emailed Charlie, I think it might be a good idea. I'm going to do it volunteer, and all volunteers have to wear masks. So let's get some of those Dem Norfolk masks out there and start a conversation, and we can also just do some good in that. It's called What Now? I put the volunteer link in the chat. So if anybody is interested, it's just from 10 to 2 on Saturday. It's they already have voter registration. I think I saw Jason Inge on this. Urban League is going to be there during doing voter registration. But if we can get out there and just kind of be a presence, that can at least start a little bit of getting us in the community until more and more events are allowing people to actually be present.
All right. So if you do want to participate, please go ahead and email us, and we will have some people there volunteering, and we'll send you the sign-up link, etc. So go ahead, send it to the Norfolk Democrats at Gmail account if you're interested in spending a little bit of time on July 25th. Anything else, Megan?
Where was that?
It's in the church. It's on Church Street in that area. I gave the flyer to Charlie.
Yeah,
So if you're interested,
it's over where they're putting in that new garden over there across the street, right up the street from the Martin Luther King Memorial, like a few hundred yards on the left up from
it's right where Teens with a Purpose is, if you know that location.
It's supposed to be right next door to Gray's funeral home.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's try and have a presence there.
The sheriff's office is going to have some tents there, and we'll be out there.
Good.
Great.
Good.
Count.
All right. Old business. Just your thoughts. The second congressional district is talking about having all the committees in the second congressional district get together and maybe get a common, Biden, Warner, Loria sign. We would be on our own in the third district unless something like that comes. But basically, I'm looking for your thoughts if this is just something that just doesn't happen. Again, I was trying to get Norfolk specific. come up, and this is not necessarily a firm fixed thing, but it's a concept. We could print up 500 or 1,000 of these bumper stickers. Again, Norfolk specific. We get a little advertising, the Norfolk Democrats. We could do yard signs of this kind of something. Again, we're marketing ourselves as well as our Democrats on the ballot. But again, we'd be on our own as opposed to jumping in the second CD or the third CD and this, that, and the other thing. So it's kind of old business. And if you guys are thinking this is something to explore, I will continue to be happy to do that.
I like being Norfolk specific. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, yeah, and I like it, and I'm going to go ahead and ask for donations and contributions similar to the face masks. So our elected officials will kick in and cover most of the cost of these. And I just think these would be cool. Look at it. I mean, that yard sign, and those are all over Norfolk. That just seems to be really cool. Plus, like I said, we get the Norfolk Democrats pitch there at the bottom. So, so it's something I will continue to explore unless people think I'm being crazy, but you wouldn't be the first ones.
Hey, Charlie?
Sure.
What do you think about, instead of just being the generic, here are the candidates, Norfolk thing, having some sort of slogan like Norfolk votes blue or vote blue Norfolk, or something?
Well, yeah, I think it's important to have the names out there, though.
I mean, those are just, no, I'm not saying not have the names. I'm saying that to have that in addition, like where you have Norfolk down the side, maybe instead of just Norfolk, under it, it says Norfolk votes blue, and then the names there, or something. I wasn't thinking about getting rid of the names. I absolutely agree with all the names.
Okay.
Charlie,
Yes.
the more you put on a sign, the less legible it's going to be.
Good point. Very good point.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I may, all right. I may have something more specific because obviously until all those X's are filled there on the VP slot, we're not moving forward anyway.
I definitely wouldn't put a big "and" sign after Biden because it kind of like puts the "and."
Yeah.
It's the last thing you see. I don't think you need one. Just
okay.
Joe Biden, Vice President, Mark Warner.
Yeah. This is just a mock-up and a concept. We can get it better. All right. Thank you very much. Yes.
Charlie, I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt real quick. We had some people asking about the flyer information. I tried to put it in the chat section, but it's just coming up as the gobbledygook link, not actually the flyer. If you could just send that out, I think that would be helpful for the folks that are interested in even just attending as opposed to volunteering.
Okay, very good. Will do. Send me a reminder. Okay. So with that, also, if you recall on our face mask, if you were, we use this as an inducement to get new members. We've gotten a few. But if you're a member who does want one, you have one for free, send me an email. We've probably about 20 or 30 members have asked for them, so we still probably got a few members who haven't done it, but we'll get them in your hands if you want one as well. All right, hopefully our people are still on here. New business. Medea, are you still here?
I am still here. Hi.
God bless you, darling.
How are you all doing?
Good.
Oh, good. Well, this was a great meeting. I really enjoyed that. The fun perks of this job is you get to hear very interesting people speak all the time. So this has been so good. Hi, everyone. I'm Medea, Field Director for Elaine Luria's campaign. As has been stressed on this call a couple of times today, this is a very important race that we need to win. We need to keep Congresswoman Luria in the House. As a military spouse, I care about keeping her in the house because she's going to keep people like my husband safe, who's at sea right now in a weird pandemic time. I think he's coming back in 2 weeks, but we're not sure. So that's just a more personal reason for me to be here right now. From a campaign perspective, we spent the past 13 weeks doing volunteer recruitment. We recently switched the flip and went over to doing direct voter contact. So what that means is that we're reaching out to registered voters in the district, having a conversation about the election, what's at stake this November, their plans to vote, updating them on all the different voting laws that have been expanded, and making sure that their strong support for the Congresswoman is converting into a vote. And that takes work. It is the most effective tool we have after door knocking, which we are currently not able to do for good reasons. So one conversation at a time is how we're going to be winning this election. In the past 10 days, we've made 10,000 phone calls. So we're averaging about 1,000 calls a day right now. We're going to need to make that at the same rate and then significantly higher in September to meet our goals. We need to make about 250,000 phone calls, which is very possible. If it's my team alone, we can spend every breathing moment between now and election day making calls and we will not meet the goal. But if everybody can join for a little bit at a time, some volunteers just do 20 dials a night, makes a huge difference. Some dedicate an hour or two for this election and that makes a huge difference. We can train you. Our main priority is making volunteering fun and enjoyable while making a difference. These trainings are fun and enjoyable. And very easy to catch up on. Once you get trained for 30 minutes, you're all set and you're good to go between now and election day. So we'd love to see you for any of our upcoming trainings. I'm also going to drop my email address in the chat window if anybody would like to reach out about anything related to phone banking, not related to phone banking. You want to know where to get campaign materials or what we have of upcoming events, please reach out. Tim Rothgeb is on this call. Tim is our newly appointed yard sign delivery person. So if you're looking for a yard sign, Tim's gonna have them soon and be able to give those out to you as well. And that's pretty much everything from my end, but I'm happy to take any questions if anyone has them.
Is it me or was it?
I think Charlie has frozen.
I think so. I was afraid it was me that had frozen, but everybody else
There he
is
is.
here.
There he
You
is.
just froze up. Am I frozen up or is
You're back.
the
Medea?
Yes.
oh, my internet stopped? Okay. All right. Very good. Thank you, Medea. So basically, the only real voter contact we see is phone banking, right?
Right now, yes, we're gonna eventually have some text banking. We're gonna have some online ambassador programs. We have been doing that, but just the only one that's a two-way conversation is the phones. That's the only place where we're able to hear people's concerns as well. And you know, the good news is everybody's picking up and everybody wants to talk to you because pandemic times has left us isolated, and it means more people are picking up and more people are having conversations. So it's truly really fun.
Now, is the campaign office on Hampton Boulevard still there? Or is it?
I believe so. I believe so. I have never visited it. I only got to district about 2 weeks ago. However, we are working on reopening all the offices we have had. So to be determined, I can get back to you on that.
Okay, no problem. Thank you very much. Ryan Jackson, an update from Mark Warner.
Yes, thank you all. Again, my name is Ryan Jackson, Deputy Political Director with Mark Warner's campaign. Senator Warner, we were planning to hold in-person events this week, but unfortunately weren't able to. Someone in his family came into contact with someone with coronavirus. So out of abundance of caution, we canceled those events. But we did have two virtual events in Hampton Roads area. We had a Veterans Roundtable this morning. I think it went very well. And Linwood Fisher was able to attend as part of the participants. And we did get some good press out of that with the Wavy TV 10. So you may see that on the news this evening. Also, another thing, we had a African Americans business leaders kind of a virtual roundtable. Also, Senator Warner is pushing some legislation that would give billions of dollars, or a range of $7 billion to go towards loans and grants to women and minority-owned businesses. So that's something we just pushed from also that perspective. From a campaign perspective, we are getting, everything is virtual. But we do have our HBCU students from Mark Warner, that group. So if you know any students at Norfolk State that may want to get interested in the campaign, please let us know. We do have a
Can't hear you.
Yeah, he froze. This
He's
time I think he
frozen.
froze up, not me.
Yeah, he's frozen there. He'll come back in a second.
See,
Or
this
maybe
all
not.
goes, see, it all goes back to that 5G thing. Ryan, you back?
Can you hear me now?
There you go. Yeah, you froze.
Yes, it's in my internet. What was the last part you heard, Charlie?
Let's see, you were the HBCU groups.
Okay, yeah. So Indian students, at Norfolk State, send them our way, and we'll definitely get them involved. We also are doing a Project 133, in which we want to get personal stories from each of the localities in the Commonwealth. So we want to get from all 133 cities and counties. So if any Norfolk Dems want to get involved with that, you may be a part of a campaign ad or some promotion materials. And it'll just be a quick 30-second, 1-minute video. But I'll drop my email in the chat if that's something you want to be a part of about why you're supporting Senator Warner. But that's all I have. Thank you so much, Charlie.
Thank you, Ryan. You do great work. Now, I did not see her on here. Elaine Flowers is new to the VA Victory. Did you get on the call? She said she was. No. Okay. Anyway, she is new with the coordinated campaign VA Victory. But we'll hear from her again.
It's actually a male, Charlie.
Oh, is it? Okay, sure. Why not? He did not get on the call. All right, Electoral Board. As most of you will know, Barbara had to step down. Atoy Carrington is our new Electoral Board member. Michael, what do you want to say about her?
Well, I think a round of applause, first of all, for Atoy. We're all very happy to be working with her. And Atoy as she does, a lot of things for this committee, as everyone here personally knows, and she has already, she came right into the election on her first day was on the primary. Really, it was her third or fourth day, and she did great. And she's going to be a wonderful steward of what's right about elections in Norfolk. I think everyone here knows that there's an election in November. We've been talking about it pretty much all night. So one of the things Barbara was saying in the chat, and I just want to say for those of you who don't see the chat, so some laws have changed in a really good way. Now you can vote absentee by mail or in person with no excuse starting 45 days before the election, which is when the absentee period would have been anyway. So this specific election, there's still going to be COVID, there's still going to be coronavirus around, and a lot of models show it coming back with a not very nice vengeance. So take advantage of that. Vote from home. Or if you want to make sure, if you want to put your own ballot in the scanner, keep in mind that we're going to have some vote centers open 45 days out. So you don't have to go downtown. You can go to one of the other places and go at a time when it's not very crowded. We'd like to minimize the health risk as much as we can in voting, because it's very important that every single person that's a Democrat, but every single independent votes. We need everyone to vote. So we want large record turnout, but we don't want it all at once. We would like to spread it out over those 45 days just to make sure everyone stays healthy. The other thing that is new, no longer will you have to show a photo ID to vote. Any proof of Virginia residency and personhood, so a utility bill, which used to be good a long time ago, is good again. But one thing we wanted to just tell you, Atoy and I, and also Barbara would agree, I think, is your license has a barcode on the back of it that is read by our election system. So to make lines go faster, if you just give them your ID, they don't have to look at your face and compare it, but they can put it up to the poll book and immediately get your voting checked in instead of having to type in your name on the screen. So that's a really good way of helping speed up the process.
Okay.
Those are my 2 comments for today.
Yeah.
Except for Atoy is awesome.
Yeah.
You can actually go ahead and ask for your absentee ballots now. You won't receive the ballot until 45 days out.
Right, you can request now.
All right, we'll blow by that. Betty, did you have anything on the voter registration efforts? I blew by you. I forgot you. Anything?
That's quite well. This fits right in with Michael and Barbara's report. Barbara put some information there for us, but I also put in the chat box the direct link to the Norfolk Voter Registration Office, Registrar's Office. So if you click on that link, it'll take you right to the Voting in Norfolk site where you can get any information that you would need pertaining to voting in Norfolk. I don't have any upcoming registration drives through the month of July. We did have one in June. Elaine Loria actually attended an event in Virginia Beach, and I would say the only person that I registered to vote was actually a person from Norfolk. So we, and she was in Virginia Beach at the time. So we did do that, and again, tons of people needing restoration of rights information. Actually today, as some of you know, I work at the Norfolk City Jail. There was a young man in one of the classes who is ready to come home. And I asked him, was he registered to vote? And surprisingly, he said, I'm not, well, he said, I'm not sure. And I said, well, let me check for you and pull it up. And he was registered to vote in the Park Place area, and he assured me that he would be voting. So there are lots of citizens, returning citizens that are incarcerated that we help out in the Norfolk City Jail. I did help a group of engineers, the Gamma Epsilon Theta, I believe it is. It's a group of engineers who wanted to do voter registration. So I got with a couple of the leaders, and they actually went to the state website, and I walked them through the voting training process. So they're ready to go, and as well as a church in Virginia Beach. And I received a call from a gentleman who has an alliance of churches that want to have voter registration training and register folks for the upcoming election and be a satellite for their community. So that was exciting. Let's see.
Doing good stuff.
That's about it, Charlie. I have nothing else to report.
I appreciate it. Let's see if we can wind up. We got about 7 minutes. I don't know if there's any concerns, but let me see. See if I can do this. See if I can pull this up while we get to our announcements. Bingo! Look at that. Straw poll. Vice presidential choice. Go ahead and vote while we go ahead and get to our announcements. Hopefully I didn't leave anybody off, but go ahead and make your choice known. I'd be curious what people are thinking.
Where do you want us to make this choice?
Yes.
It's not showing up. Oh, launch poll. I'm
Big
sorry.
black
I
block
got
in
to hit
the
the
middle of
launch.
the street.
I'm sorry. I got to hit the launch.
Oh,
Sorry
okay.
about that. All right. So while you guys are voting, announcements. I think there is certainly one person that's got a big announcement.
Evening, everyone. So good to see everybody virtually. It's been too long since we've been in person, hopefully sometime soon. Folks, I wanted to take a couple of minutes tonight to talk to some of y'all about something that most of you already know. Next year seems like a long way away, but it's still pretty close. And next year marks the retirement of our Commonwealth's attorney, Greg Underwood. Over the last few years, I have, under Greg's encouragement, been training for today, which is the day that I'm telling you that I intend to run to succeed Greg as Commonwealth's attorney. This is a really, really exciting time to be a prosecutor. When I started 14 years ago, after being a public defender and after being a Supreme Court law clerk at the Virginia Supreme Court, the answer to everything was to jail our way out. That when people did the crime, they did the time. It was obvious then to those of us who were within the system, and now, especially with the events leading to the murder of George Floyd, the murder of numerous Black and brown Americans, that that's simply not the answer. that we are at a point that we really only see about once every 50 years to make real changes to the systems that have put away generations of Black and brown fellow citizens. As Commonwealth's attorney, Greg has been a leader in these issues, has been a voice, sometimes alone, and I've been honored to work by his side. When Greg drew controversy last year over his marijuana policy, which introduced Black and brown Norfolk citizens into the system with no enhancement to public safety, I was by his side. I helped him with that policy. I took his fight to the Supreme Court. This year, when there are discussions within Commonwealth's attorneys community, I've reached out to my friends, some of my fellow former prosecutors who are elected Commonwealth's attorneys, to talk about how we can come together and push against the Commonwealth's attorneys who are against change. I have been at Greg's side as we've worked to try and make real changes in Richmond, not just in Norfolk. I've been at Greg's side and I've helped with the efforts that Gayleen mentioned earlier tonight, an exciting effort to push for real changes in Richmond among reform prosecutors that will help make our communities safer. In fact, Gayleen, the law that you were looking at, the duty to intervene, I drafted it. The law that you saw, I suspect, is the same one that I drafted that was being circulated by that group. Why? All of this is because as Commonwealth's attorney, the job of the head prosecutor is to keep all of us alive and to keep all of us safe, and to recognize that today's defendant and tomorrow's victim are not necessarily different people, and that everybody is better than the worst thing that they did, and that everybody needs to be safe and safe from harm. The way to do that is to ensure that the structures that encourage the incarceration of people for who their parents are, where they grew up, end. And that the system demonstrates to people in the community that those who are going to jail and going to prison are going there to keep the rest of us safe and not to keep these structures in place. There's, as I said, a year between now and the Democratic primary. I intend to spend the next year making my case for why I will be your best candidate, and a candidate who will take this once in 50 years opportunity to push not for half measures, for incremental changes, for cosmetic fixes, but for true structural change that will lead both to our being safer and to our community having greater faith that the Constitution applies to all people equally. I'm going to post the information about my campaign in the comments section. The information's been up for a while. I want to thank the people who have shown an outpouring of support for my campaign so far, and I'd encourage you to follow along and to join me. Thank you.
Thank you for the announcement. He wanted to do this last meeting, and I said, well, we're focused on 2020. Let's do that. And all of a sudden, everybody in the free world is announcing for 2021 slots. So I guess it's never too early. Rather interesting. We still got some people who haven't voted, but is it up there for everybody to see? I don't know. Maybe not. But because I absolutely know nothing about anything, the leading vote getter right now is other. So I'm not sure.
Charlie,
That's Tim.
Charlie,
Or what? Yes.
that's because you don't have Kamala Harris. You have Val Demings twice.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
That's what everybody's voting for.
Oh, come on.
It's Kamala.
Okay. Thank you very much. Well, you know what? I'm going to tell you what happened. I had her in on the original list, and then I started thinking, should I add Stacey Abrams, because I hear she's really not in the top tier anymore. I said, oh, I better put Stacey Abrams in there. And when I started going alphabetically in there and put her up top, I must have knocked off her. So, all right, we will call other Kamala Harris unless there's a hardcore voter in there. All right, any other announcements or questions? Because it's 8:30 and I like to try and end these things on time. If not, our coffee is August 1st. I don't have a guest yet. Feel free to suggest it at any time. And with that,
hey, Charlie, I do have one announcement.
Yes.
On Friday, at 6:30, the Muse is hosting a live stream discussion and some reading sort of involved with racial equality and opportunity and justice. The former poet laureate of Virginia, Tim Siebels, will be there. Louisa Agloria from ODU, Desiree Cooper, Nathan Richardson, who many of you know. A lot of really great writers will be reading a little bit, but also talking about what we're dealing with today. So just go to the Muse's Facebook page or our website to see it. It's free to watch.
All right. Again, I guess I didn't get the answer to the question. So you can see the poll results?
No.
I don't see them.
I apologize for that. All right.
No.
Well, I will give you the poll results. 85% reported or voting. I had 2 votes for Stacey Abrams, 2 votes for Keisha Lance Bottoms, 4 votes for Val Demings, 1 for, I see I put Tammy Duckworth in there. All right, 1 for Tammy Duckworth, 1 for Val Demings, 6 for Susan Rice, 8 for Elizabeth Warren, and then assuming the 11 votes and others are Kamala Harris, the Norfolk City Democratic Committee is on board with a Biden-Harris ticket, which make it, you say too much on the sign, see? Harris, that's a much shorter name to add to our yard signs if we go that way. All right, last call for anything. Thank you all very much. Anything? 3, 2, 1. Thank you very, very much. We'll see you at the breakfast. And we're going to start really ratcheting it up, our phone calls and things. I didn't get to it, but we really need to start getting more interactive on our committee. So with that said, God bless you. Stay safe, everybody, and we'll talk soon.
See you, Charlie.
All right, where's my end the meeting?
Is that off? Right there.
There we go.
How the hell did I get there?